Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Deku became a legend part 1. If you guys enjoy this what if and want to see part 2, comment down below. And let me know before I start. Please do support for more awesome content and leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And also share this video with your friends and check out the description in my playlist. The author of the story 𝗬𝗵𝗃𝗁𝗍𝗪 from AO3. So let's start the video. Soulmate connections first came to light when more and more of the population were gaining supernatural quirks. People noticed that if they wrote on their arms, the ink would transfer to another person. Over time, as more research was conducted, it was determined that this phenomenon was a connection to the most important person in that individual's life and was thus termed soulmate. Research had also found that messages would be sent to different people depending on what side of the body the message was written, meaning some individuals had more than one soulmate. For those who had more than one soulmate, statistics showed that communication on the left side of the body was with one's romantic soulmate, and communication on the right side of the body was with one's platonic soulmate. It was quickly found that individuals who didn't have any form of supernatural power could not communicate with their soulmates. It was further established that communication amongst soulmates can only occur if both recipients have a quirk. Therefore, even those with a quirk would not have a soul connection if their soulmate happened to be quirkless. As of today's population, 70% have a quirk, at least one soulmate connection. 50% of the population have two soulmate connections. 15% have one soulmate connection. 5% have more than two soulmate connections. 10% have a quirk, but no soulmate connection. 20% have neither a quirk nor a soulmate connection. Bakugo Katsuki isn't sure where he fits into these statistics. Midoriya Izuku isn't sure he even cares. Midoriya Izuku doesn't remember much of his father. The few memories Izuku has retained of his father were mostly of him and his mother arguing. And then, of course, the day his father found out he was quirkless. Izuku vaguely remembered the doctor who had diagnosed him with quirklessness mentioning soulmates, but Izuku was dealing with shock at the fact that he could never be a hero. He remembered his mother gasping, "He doesn't have a soul?" Now, that's a very old-fashioned way of thinking. Your son does have a soul, and most likely will have a soulmate, the doctor had replied firmly. However, he will have no means of communicating to them, and likewise, they will have no way of communicating to him. He may or may not ever meet his soulmate. There's no clear way of knowing with quirkless individuals. Some people say they can just feel it, but there isn't enough research into this area to know for certain. When they got home and broke the news to his dad, the hair-like thread holding his parents together severed. His father had snapped. Of course he's quirkless. Of course he doesn't have a soulmate, his father seethed. We've broken him, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁. Let's be honest, we've known for years, but now it's obvious. We rushed into it. And look, it's fucked our son up. Our soul connections are so fucked. We've passed it on to him. His mother had been just as angry. Izuku had never seen his mother so furious, nor had he seen her like that since. Do not speak about my son like that. Do not speak like he's broken. He's our child. What is wrong with you? No, you're right. He's not broken. He's a victim of whatever we thought we were doing. We need to stop this gimmick and end it. We're not meant to be together. Tell me, 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁, do you even feel anything anymore? Any sort of connection? It's gone. Izuku had run out of the room and hid under his bed, hands covering his ears. He didn't understand what they were shouting about, but he knew that it was his fault. A few days later, his father was standing at the front door carrying several suitcases. He placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder and said, "I'm sorry, Izuku. Where are you going?" Izuku had asked, eyes wide. His father hesitated. "Away. I don't know for how long. I'll see you soon though. Take care, Izuku." And then he was gone. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁 had remained in the living room, stubbornly refusing to see him leave. Izuku was convinced at first that he was the reason his father walked out, because he was quirkless. Izuku was racked with guilt for weeks. He eventually confided in his mother, who had firmly assured him that this was not the case. It was also then that 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗁 had taught him about soul connections. It was the type of lesson that could be filed along with, look both ways when you cross the road. Don't trust strangers who offer you sweets. Don't rush to meet your soulmates. Basic danger awareness. Do you know what a soulmate is, Izuku? she had asked. Kakin said that a soulmate is someone who's your bestest friend in the world and someone who you marry. Izuku's face dropped a little, and he paused. I don't have a quirk. Does that mean I won't have a best friend or get married? He stared up at his mother, eyes wide and filled with unshed tears. Izuku, listen to me. This is really important, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said firmly. You're quirkless, and that means you can't communicate with your soulmates through ink. But they're out there, and they exist. However, finding your soulmates is not the be-all and end-all. I don't want you to spend your life dwelling on your soulmates. A soulmate is not someone you are destined to be with. A soulmate is someone who has the potential to be your perfect match. But you both need to put the work in, get to know each other, take your time. Just because someone is your soulmate doesn't mean you need to rush to be with them, okay? Your soulmates are not the only important people in your life. You will have other friends, girlfriends, boyfriends, and they might be just as important to you. Is Dad your soulmate? He was. But we rushed into it, Izuku, and it didn't end well. We got so excited to find each other, and we didn't take our time to get to know each other. Our connection is gone. I don't think we're soulmates anymore, 𝗵𝗃𝗃 said quietly. Being taught such a lesson from a young age, both from seeing firsthand how soulmate connections differed greatly to what he saw on TV and read in books, and the warning from his mother, Izuku very rarely thought about his soulmate. He would never be able to contact them anyway. Besides, he was too busy studying heroics and writing in his notebooks, still determined to become a hero despite being quirkless. 𝗵𝗃𝗃𝗃 Izuku packed his bag tiredly. After a mentally draining day, he just wanted to crawl into bed. They had the Think About Your Future talk today, which had been solely centered around heroes and not a single other career path. Up until his third year, Izuku was still happily living in his daydream world in which he could still become a hero. Not even the harsh reminders from Kakin and classmates could deter him from his delusional dream of becoming a hero. Quirkless and hero were two things that didn't go together, and it had been a long time coming for Izuku to realize that. He sighed. A shadow appeared from above him, and his notebook was snatched out of his hand. Izuku sighed harder. Oh yeah, and there was him to think about. Kakin's Bakugo, whatever, waved his notebook tauntingly over his head. Izuku squinted to see which one it was. It was his hero notebook. Izuku felt dread creep over his body, and he got a feeling he wouldn't be heading home as easily as he would have liked. We're not done talking yet, Deku. Izuku thought this was an interesting thing to say as he had not spared Bakugo a single word all day. Talking? Talking about what? Izuku asked, selflessly refraining from letting out a groan. Also, can I please have my notebook back? During their career talk, his homeroom tutor had conveniently remembered he had existed and simply could not resist mentioning how Izuku wanted to go to UA. Bakugo couldn't wait to give his 2 cents on what he thought about that. Izuku wouldn't expect anything less of someone so narcissistic. Why, Deku, you're below the rejects, you're quirkless. How can you even stand in the same ring as me? Bakugo had towered over him, teeth bared into a snarl, hands raised threateningly. Izuku thought he looked akin to the villain he saw on his way to school that morning. Haven't you even got anything to say for yourself, stupid Deku? Izuku hadn't. There was nothing worth saying. He'd get beat either way. Bakugo was glaring at him, waiting for some form of a response. Izuku wasn't about to grant him that privilege, choosing instead to stare back. Bakugo lost the staring competition. You could at least say something to defend yourself, useless Deku, Bakugo had jeered instead, before stomping off back to his desk. Maybe that's why he's mad, Izuku thought absently. He lost. Bakugo lifted him harshly by the collar of his uniform. Izuku was still sitting at his desk, the edge of which dug uncomfortably into his thighs as he was half lifted from his seat. Bakugo's teeth were bared again, and his other hand was raised threateningly. There was that likeness to a villain that Izuku couldn't help but notice again. Don't tell me you've forgotten, Deku. Our talk about you being delusional enough to think you can get into the hero course at UA? Oh yeah, I'm not going to the hero course at UA. I only said that in hopes that I might happen to get my quirk, because statistics have shown that 1.5% of the population get their quirk much later in adolescence. Roughly around the time one develops their soul connections, actually. But I don't think that's not going to happen for me, so I think I'll just do programming or some dash. A harsh explosion to his face cut him off. Shut the fuck up, Deku. What the fuck are you even rambling about? Izuku winced and gently patted his face. That had been a rough one. I was just clarifying that you don't need to worry about me competing with you or whatever. I don't plan on going to UA or becoming a hero. Huh? You think I'm worried about you joining the hero course? Don't be fucking stupid, Deku. I'm more concerned about the second-hand embarrassment of watching you even attempt that. Well, I just said I'm not going to, so. Bakugo's jaw twitched and Izuku was prepared to get another explosion to the face for talking back like that, when one of his friends piped up. Katsuki, what's that? He asked, pointing to the notebook still clenched in Bakugo's fist. Kaken held it up for him to read. Huh? Hero analysis for the future? Seriously? You really are fucking delusional. Minion number 2 mocked, laughing loudly. Izuku ground his teeth. Give it back. Bakugo glanced at him and sneered. He held the notebook between his palms and, before Izuku could protest, blew up his notebook. Without hesitating, Bakugo then threw the burnt notebook out of the window. Izuku ran to the window, a lump forming in his throat. My notebook. Even if Izuku wasn't going to be a hero, that was still his hobby. His only interest. The only thing giving his life any meaning. He spotted it in the pond and gave a quick sigh. He hoped his writing would still be legible enough for him to copy them into a fresh notebook. Izuku turned and glared at Bakugo. Bakugo sauntered over to him and gripped his shoulder. Izuku forced himself not to flinch, even when the blistering heat hit his skin. Don't speak to me like that again, Deku, Bakugo drawled, before letting go of him with a shove. Bakugo paused at the doorway where he was walking out with his friends. He glanced over his shoulder and looked Izuku up and down with contempt. I know a cure for your quirklessness, Deku. Take swan dive off the roof and pray you'll be born with a quirk in your next life. Maybe you'll reincarnate with a soul this time too. Izuku inhaled sharply, and he turned to glare at Bakugo. He wanted to say something, but the lump in his throat stifled anything he could have said to defend himself. Izuku thought the lump might have just suffocated and killed him. Bakugo's face appeared to falter a little and, just for a second, he didn't look like a villain. Just a teenage boy who impulsively said something he regretted. But then just as quickly as it went, the villainous look on his face reappeared. Trick of the light. A sob left Izuku's throat, and he smothered it instantly with his hand. Izuku fished his notebook out of the pond. He stared at it until his vision became unfocused, and he started seeing double. Tears swam in his eyes, and he hated himself. Hated himself for still getting upset by the things Bakugo said to him. This time was different, though. He's never said anything like that before. Never said anything so hateful. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll be born with a quirk in your next life. Maybe you'll reincarnate with a soul this time too. Bastard. Underneath his self-loathing, Izuku felt a flash of irritation at Bakugo implying he was soulless. It was stupid old wives' tale anyway, that quirkless individuals didn't have souls. They do. They have soulmates too. They just don't have a connection to communicate with them. Not that it matters. Izuku has long since entertained the idea of having a soulmate. It's just as well he can't communicate with them, because even if he could, he wouldn't. The idea of being stuck to someone he had no choice over suffocated Izuku if he thought about it too much. Izuku was sad about it once. About not being able to talk to his soulmate, the person who would love him unconditionally. But then he would frequently get reminded of his parents, and he would remember that the love between soulmates can be very conditional. Too consumed by his thoughts, Izuku only just noticed his route home was blocked by a looming figure. A villain. A putrid-smelling villain. Adrenaline overflowed Izuku's body, making his field of vision spin and freezing him on the spot. The villain was slithering out of the grate. Already colossal in size, it was hard to determine what its true size was as it continued to keep worming out of the grate. Looming over Izuku, it gave no warning before engulfing Izuku into its repugnant body and forcing a sludgy arm into his mouth. Don't worry, I'm just going to take over your body, the villain cackled in mock reassurance. Izuku's body, which was currently fueled by his reflexes and flight or fight response, felt several impulses at that moment. The first was to scream, but that only further decreased his limited oxygen supply. The second was his gag reflex. However, there was no way to vomit, so his body convulsed unpleasantly whilst more gunk slithered down his throat. It'll only hurt for about 45 seconds. You'll feel better soon. The third was to struggle helplessly. You can't grab me. I'm fluid. The villain cackled at Izuku's antics. Thanks for your help. You're my hero. Izuku's vision became murky. Someone was slapping his face. Hey, slap slapple slap. Hey, slap slap slap. Hey, slap slap slap. Izuku opened his eyes, squinting at the bright afternoon sun. Oh good. All Might was hovering over Izuku. Adrenaline flooded Izuku as he screamed in bewilderment, shuffling backwards rapidly. I'm glad you're okay. Sorry about getting you caught up in my villain fighting. All Might boomed, raising a hand. An apology. I don't usually make mistakes like this, but I was in high spirits on my day off in a new place. All Might gave a loud, hearty laugh. Izuku heard himself giggle hysterically in response, mind foggy, confusion overwhelming him. Anyway, you were a big help. I captured him safely. The #1 hero, All Might. He's the real thing. He looks completely different in person. Izuku was abruptly in a panic. Oh right, an A autograph. Where should I? Izuku's eyes landed on his heavily singed notebook. In that notebook. Izuku lunged for the notebook, opened it, and noticed that All Might had already signed it. Izuku leapt to his feet, bowing uncontrollably. Thank you very much. All Might patted the soda bottles in his cargo pants. Well, I need to take this guy to the police. See you again on the other side of the screen. All Might said with a wave. Wait, there are still things I want to ask. His once-in-a-lifetime meeting with All Might could not just be a quick one-sided chat in which Izuku spends most of time being confused and unable to string a coherent sentence together. Well then, I'm counting on your continued support. And with that, All Might leapt in the sky, along with Izuku. Izuku likes to think he's smart and intelligent despite being quirkless. However, there are times in his life when he makes the stupidest decisions. Grabbing onto All Might's leg as he was jumping hundreds of feet into the air was perhaps his new #1 most dumbest thing to have ever done. A few minutes later, All Might deposited them both onto a roof. Izuku felt exhausted from all the adrenaline that had been rushing through his body over and over again, with no time to recover in between. Good grief. If you talk to the people downstairs, I'm sure they'll let you down. I seriously am out of time, so I really must be off. Izuku leapt to his feet. Wait. No, I will not wait. Even if I don't have a quirk, can I become a hero? Izuku asked in a rush, already knowing what the answer would be, yet still feeling a glimmer of misguided hope. He clenched his fists and asked with more conviction, Can even someone without a quirk be like you? Smoke began emanating out of All Might and was replaced by a skinny figure wearing 2 big clothes. He looked gaunt, cheekbones hollow, eyes sunken in. Did All Might just deflate? Izuku's eyes hysterically scanned the rooftop to see where All Might had teleported to. Finding no one, Izuku shrieked, Why you're deflating? Huh? Fake? A fake? You're so skinny. The skinny figure looked back at him, unimpressed. I am All Might, he announced before letting out a cough, blood sputtering from his mouth. Disbelief overwhelmed Izuku's thoughts. How could this skeletal figure be All Might? All Might is fearless. He saves everyone with a smile. He's the greatest. Izuku stammered out, voice high-pitched. All Might sighed. A fearless smile, huh? He slid to the floor and continued. Now that you've seen me like this, 𝗬𝗪𝗓, make sure you don't write about it online, even accidentally. All Might lifted his shirt. Izuku recoiled and gasped. It's an injury I got from an enemy's attack 5 years ago, All Might explained. Half of my respiratory organs were destroyed, and I lost my whole stomach. I've become emaciated from repeated surgeries and the after effects. Right now, I can only work as a hero for about 3 hours a day. Izuku trembled in disbelief. Pros are always risking their lives. I cannot simply say, you can become a hero even without power. I see. Izuku managed to whisper. If you want to help others, then you could also be a police officer. They're often teased because they get villains delivered to their doorstep, but that is also a fine occupation. All Might made his way to the rooftop door. He paused. It's not bad to dream, but you also have to consider what's realistic, 𝗬𝗪𝗏. All Might left through the door. Izuku stood there, numb, mind empty save for a buzzing ringing through his ears. Then, an explosion. As if by some hardwired reflex, Izuku jolted. A villain? What hero will go to the scene? He ran to the exit on the roof before stopping abruptly upon realizing what he was doing. All Might's face flashed in his head. The skinny All Might. The true All Might. The realistic All Might. I cannot simply say, you can become a hero even without power. No false words of encouragement, just plain old reality. Just what the doctor recommended. Izuku sighed miserably. He trudged down the stairs, walking firmly on his route home. He was not going to go see the villain attack because there was no point. Watching and taking notes of heroes was just going to feel meaningless. His one and only interest in life. God, he was boring. Maybe it wasn't even Bakugo's fault he had no friends. Maybe he was just that boring. If Izuku could communicate with his soulmate, they would probably get so sick of him talking about the same thing over and over again. He stared down at his burnt notebook, absently flipping through his notes. Notes that were written to help him one day become a hero. He ran his fingers over the areas that were singed brown. A lump formed in Izuku's throat. Don't cry. You knew? Didn't you? The reality. You knew. That's why you were trying so desperately. You were averting your eyes, not looking at reality. There was a sudden explosion, jolting Izuku and altering him to his surroundings. Is this where the explosion was earlier? Hang on. How the hell did I get here? I was walking home. Izuku scratched his head, puzzled. He tried to retrace his steps in his head. He really couldn't determine how or when his path had diverted to here. Shrugging, he stood on his tiptoes, peering over the bystanders in front of him. His eyes fell upon the villain. Izuku gasped and reeled back, memories of disgusting slime suffocating him, consuming him until he was no longer conscious, flitted through his field of vision. Why is that guy here? Did it get away from All Might? Did he drop it? If he did, Izuku's mind flashed back to when he impulsively and idiotically grabbed onto All Might's leg. Then it's my fault. Why aren't the heroes doing anything? A bystander demanded. They can't. Apparently the villain caught a junior high schooler. It's been like that for a while. Izuku gasped, guilt swirling in his stomach. His eyes desperately scanned to see who it was. Wait, isn't that the villain All Might was chasing earlier? Izuku overheard a bystander ask. All Might? No way. Well, then where is he now? Why isn't All Might doing anything? Izuku's vision began spinning, guilt roiling in his stomach. He felt sick. It's my fault. He can't do anything. He won't be able to do anything. All we can do is wait for a hero with a more suitable quirk. I'm sorry. Izuku apologized pathetically in his head. God, I'm so sorry. Help will arrive soon. Someone. A hero will soon. Izuku noticed something in the villain. Not something, someone. It was the kid that got caught, straining to escape. His notebook slipped out of his hands as he smothered his mouth in horror. Izuku's eyes widened upon realization of who it was that got caught by the villain. Kaken. Izuku saw those eyes. Those red eyes. So often filled with anger and contempt, brimming with fear. Fear and panic and helplessness. Izuku felt something jolt deep within him. An impulse, an inexplicable urge. Before Izuku could even think, he shot out, legs pushing him through the sea of bystanders. Distantly, Izuku heard the heroes shout. Out after him. Then, the reality of what he had just done hit him. Why did I just run out? What the hell am I doing? Die in a explosion, the villain shouted at him. Izuku begins panicking. What should I do? What should I do at a time like this? He scanned his brain, mentally flicking through his notebooks. He gasped, Hero Notebook number 13, page 25. Make the opponent flinch back, and then used that opening to restrain. Izuku shouldered off his rucksack and flung it with all his strength at the villain. "Take that." He missed, but the contents of the bag flew out, hitting the villain in its eye, allowing Kaken to free his head and cough. "Kaken!" Izuku screamed. "Deku!" Kaken demanded angrily. "Why are you here?" "I have no idea. My legs just moved on their own." Izuku screamed in response, helplessly trying to dig through the villain's fluid body. Izuku thought back to the moment. The urge he had felt upon seeing Kaken in danger, a reflex so ingrained, so instinctive, so buried. A reflex that activated upon seeing that look upon Kaken's face. "You looked like you were asking for help," Izuku stammered weakly, tears welling up in his eyes. Kaken's eyes widened, and he stared at him. "Stop it," he choked out. It was unclear if that was directed at Izuku or the villain. "Just a little longer. Don't get in my way," the villain fumed, raising a threatening limb. Hiro scrambled in a panic. "He'll die in vain. Is he suicidal?" "Deku, get away," Kaken screamed, and something in Izuku's heart ached. Izuku raised an arm to his face, flinching defensively, and waited for the attack. But it never came. Izuku looked up hesitantly. "I really am pathetic," All Might proclaimed, appearing behind the smoke in his muscle form. "All Might." All Might fought back the villain's limbs and continued, "Even though I admonished you, I wasn't putting what I said into practice. Pros are always risking their lives." "All Might," the villain screamed. "Detroit smash." All Might bellowed, blasting through the villain with ease. Silence. Izuku was laying on the concrete for the second time that day. This time, however, he was laying side by side with Kaken. He looked over at him. "What is this feeling in my body right now?" he pondered. He recognized it as relief, but it felt like something more than that. He felt it so intensely in his heart, so deep, Izuku couldn't explain it. It was as if his body was telling him that keeping Kaken safe was crucial. But why, though? Why him? Why Bakugo? Why Kaken? Surely after everything they've both been through, his body would have learned that it would be safer to stay far away from Kaken, right? Izuku glanced over at Kaken's hand that wasn't too far away from his. Izuku felt another similar deep-rooted impulse, except this time to take Kaken's hand. To take it and hold it and affirm his safety. Without thinking, Izuku began to reach over, his fingertips brushing Kaken's. A droplet of rain hit his cheek, stopping him in his tracks. "Wait, what am I doing? Do I want to die? What's wrong with me?" Izuku got scolded by the heroes for his rash behavior, to which he himself admitted that he deserved. He glanced over at Kaken, who was sat hunched over, pointedly ignoring the heroes that were praising him for his bravery and toughness. He met Izuku's eyes, who jumped a little. Kaken's eyes narrowed before looking away. The sun was setting as Izuku walked home, casting the neighborhood in its golden glow. He had hung around, waiting for All Might to be done with his interviews so he could apologize, but it was getting late, and he was sure his mother must have seen the news by then and what he had done. He considered just sending a message on his homepage when he got home. "Deku!" a voice shouted from behind him. Izuku turned to see who it was. "Kaken?" Kaken was panting. He must have run to catch up with Izuku. "I never asked you for help, and you didn't help. Got it? I was fine by myself. You're a quirkless failure playing without a full deck. Don't think you can look down on me. Are you trying to make me owe you? Don't look down on me. You damn nerd." Bakugo all but screamed at Izuku. He stomped off before Izuku could even think of formulating a response. Izuku let out an exasperated sigh. Of course. Bakugo's poor ego. I should have been more thoughtful instead of rushing out and trying to save him. What was I thinking? Izuku turned to continue his introspective walk home when suddenly All Might appeared from around the corner of a street. Izuku just about jumped out of his skin. "Hey, All Might, why are you here? I was wrong about what I said earlier." "Huh. You can be a hero." Izuku stared contemplatively at his body in his bedroom mirror. 10 months of training flew by before he knew it. It was soon time for the UA entrance exams. Working towards gaining All Might's quirk had been no easy feat, but despite this, he had taken some satisfaction in it. The ache in his abdomen as he got up out of the bed the next day after an intensive workout, burn in his thighs as he sat down at his desk in school, the strain in his shoulders as he shrugged on his backpack. All signs that his body was improving, that he was doing something right. The gains in his appearance were another bonus. Izuku no longer looked like the weedy kid he was 10 months ago. His arms had bulked out, shoulders had broadened, his stomach had become more defined. He was more confident in himself and his appearance. In addition to this, for the first time in all his time at school, he had been doing well in PE. It was roughly a month into his training when Izuku no longer was at the bottom of the class, and roughly 2 months in when the other kids and his teacher began to notice. He stopped being picked last on sports teams, and, much to his dismay, Bakugo had begun vowing to beat him at the start of every lesson. It was usually neck and neck between the two of them. He vaguely wondered why he didn't start working out years ago. The sun rose above the gently lapping waves, casting a reflection of shades of amber, purple, and blue. There, on the seashore stood All Might and Izuku. This is it. It's finally time for All Might to give me his power. Izuku imagined All Might placing a hand before him, his quirk transferring to him in a glowing beam of light. Instead, however, All Might reached up and pulled a strand of hair from his head. Eat this, All Might commanded tremendously. Huh? Izuku murmured, dumbstruck. To gain my quirk, you need to consume a part of myself. It doesn't matter what, as long as it's got my DNA. Is there really no other way? Nope. A hair. Would you prefer my toenails? Izuku gagged. Come along now. You'll be late for your exam. Wait, let me just... Gulp. Izuku clenched down on his teeth, forcing himself not to retch. He waited to feel something. What? He didn't know. A surge of energy? A sense of power? To morph into a muscle form like All Might? Nothing. I don't feel any different. Is that normal? He asked. All Might chuckled heartily. Of course not. We need to wait for your digestion to kick in. You'll feel something in 2 or 3 hours, just in time for your exam. A few warnings before using my quirk. Firstly, soulmates. I myself was quirkless, and so I've never had the ability to communicate with my soulmate. And when I took one for all from my master, I still never gained the ability to communicate with my soulmate. It's hard to determine why this is as all the previous holders had. Quirks. I don't want you to be put out by Dash. It doesn't matter, Izuku interrupted. I don't really care about soulmates. If anything, that's an advantage, he thought dryly. Oh, are you sure? Positive. Izuku smiled. Oh, okay, right. So secondly, you have become a proper vessel, but it was one that was formed in a hurry. Prepare yourself for the physical repercussions it'll have on your body. What do you mean? There's no time to explain. However, when you use my quirk, one for all, squeeze your buttocks and yell this inside your heart. Smash. Izuku trudged to the UA exam hall a few hours later, deep in thought about his new quirk. Izuku has never had a quirk, so he wasn't sure how a quirk was even activated. He knew All Might had given him instructions, but he was still confused. Was activating a quirk like moving an arm? I doubt he's something you don't necessarily think about. You just do it? Or was it like speaking, in that some conscious thought would need to go into its activation? Or was it like, get the fuck out of my way, Deku? A harsh voice interrupted his thoughts, making him flinch. Bakugo. Bakugo furrowed his brow at him before snarling, Don't stand in front of me. I'll kill you. Oh, good morning to you too, Bakugo, Izuku quipped. Let's both do our best. Bakugo didn't feel obliged to respond, firmly walking away, shoulders hunched, hands shoved into his pockets. Much to Izuku's surprise, Bakugo didn't bother him since that day. Except during his PE lessons, that is. It was surprising to say the least. He would have thought Bakugo would have targeted him more, especially considering his ego. But no, he just simply ignored Izuku's presence. It had been peaceful. If it was that easy, why didn't he start ignoring me years ago? He shook his head. He needn't be thinking about Bakugo now. It was time for him to take his first step to becoming a hero. Izuku stepped, and promptly tripped over nothing. Mentally cursing himself, he braced himself for the inevitable faceplant. However, the ground was not getting any closer, and he seemed to have stopped moving. "Are you okay?" a voice asked. Izuku noticed that his feet were not touching the ground and began panicking. Gentle hands straightened him and set him onto his feet. He looked to his side to see a girl with warm brown eyes and rosy cheeks beaming at him. "It's just my quirk. Sorry for using it without asking you first, but it'd be bad luck if you fell, right?" The heat rose to Izuku's cheeks and flustered, trying to think of something to say to the kind, smiling girl. "Aren't you nervous?" she continued, oblivious to Izuku's internal struggle. "Let's do our best. See you later." He stared after her as she skipped inside the building. "I just talked to a girl," Izuku thought in awe, ignoring the fact that he didn't actually say a word. Izuku saw the girl again, her having been assigned to the same exam center as him. "Oh, it's the nice girl I met earlier." He felt a small twitch in his legs, as if his body was nudging him, trying to give him a hint to go speak to her. "Well," Izuku thought, "I do need to thank her for earlier." Before he could go over and speak to her, a firm hand on his shoulder stopped him in his tracks. "That girl appears to be trying to focus," said a tall figure with glasses. It was the guy that had called him out for muttering during the entrance exam orientation. Izuku felt a spark of irritation, but it was overshadowed by fear and intimidation. "Why are you here taking the entrance exam? To interfere with everyone else?" Izuku flustered, trying to explain that he was not, but was saved by Present Mick's voice echoing from the tannoy. "Okay, start." They gaped at the commentating tower. "What's up? There's no countdowns in real fights. Run, run." Izuku scrambled, trying to find just one robot. Just one enemy he could defeat, but it appeared he was too slow. There were no villains left for him. A shadow loomed over him. Save for that one. An obstacle that will go crazy in narrow spaces. I recommend that you listeners try to avoid it. Izuku did just that. Or at least he tried to. His body stuck in its typical scared and frozen state. "Damn it. I'm still at 0 points. I need to find a villain. Just 1 point. Just 1 point. 2 minutes left." Present Mike announced cheerfully. "Shit. Everything All Might gave me. All that hard work. For nothing. Ow." A cry yelled out, and Izuku jolted as though a bolt of electricity had shocked every nerve in his body. He looked over to see who it was and gasped. The nice girl from earlier. Something switched in Izuku's body, and his scared, stiff muscles sprang up from where he was trembling on the ground. In that moment, Izuku felt it again. The same feeling he'd felt when he saw Bakugo stuck inside the sludge villain, a deep-rooted reflex to save and keep safe. And before he could realize what he was doing, Izuku was launching himself towards the foe villain, power thrumming in his right arm, buttocks clenched tight. Smash. "I don't even know this girl," Izuku thought as he plummeted to the ground, the reality of what he had just done sinking in. "I didn't think again. My legs just started moving before I could even think about what I was doing. It made sense last time because it was Kaken. Despite everything, he is my childhood best friend. It was my fault he was attacked in the first place. But this time, I acted the same way for a stranger." Pain suddenly hit Izuku like a sack of bricks, and he sharply realized that he had well and truly just broken his arm. Despite himself, he marveled at the shade of purple his arm had begun, and the way it was flapping as he fell and fell and fell was pretty interesting too. "Prepare yourself for the physical repercussions it'll have on your body," All Might had said. To this extent? Izuku exclaimed internally. 10 months was not enough time. He desperately tried to come up with a plan to land on the ground, but the only one he could come up with would shatter his left arm too, recreating All Might's move, Detroit Smash, to break his fall. Better than nothing. Better than falling to my death. Preparing himself, Izuku clenched his fist and drew it back. "Here we go." SMA. Slap. A sharp hit to his face jerked Izuku, the power from All for One withdrawing from his body. It didn't matter, however, for he was hovering above the concrete, just like earlier. "Release," the girl forced out. Izuku hit the ground. The girl vomited. "I'm safe," Izuku thought vaguely. "No. She saved me." Though he was physically unable to move, his body urged him to go over and see if she was okay, even if he had to drag himself there. Is she all right? She looks uninjured at least. I'm so glad. Wait. Izuku pulled himself up short. What's wrong with me? Why am I worrying about her when I've broken my limbs and… Shit. I have 0 points. Time's up, 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗵 announced. A deafening buzzing filled Izuku's ears, and his vision began blurring. The pain was no longer easy to ignore. He blacked out. Izuku glared at the imposing envelope on his desk as if it had personally offended him. His long-awaited UA letter, informing him of whether he had been accepted or not. He didn't know why he was delaying. He already knew what the outcome would be. He grit his teeth and, like ripping off a plaster, he tore open the letter. Out clattered a hologram, lighting up the moment it hit his desk. I am here as a projection, boomed All Might's voice. Sorry for not getting in contact with you. I've been busy. All Might? Izuku mumbled. So, 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗁𝗖𝗎, you passed the written exam. However, you did get 0 points on the practical exam, All Might informed him. Of course that means you didn't pass. Exactly as predicted. I knew this would happen, so why does it hurt so bad? It's so frustrating. Tears welled in Izuku's eyes. If that was all there was to it, All Might continued. Have a look at this. A video began playing next to All Might. She came to negotiate directly in person after the exam. Izuku gasped. It was the girl he saved. The person with curly hair and freckles. Do you know who I'm talking about? Kind of plain looking, she asked 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗵 tentatively. Is it possible for me to give him some of my points? At least the points he lost because of me? He saved me at the cost of passing. Izuku bit his lip and began trembling, tears welling in his eyes. She's so kind. It needn't have mattered, however, as 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗵 began explaining how transferring points was just not possible. There has been a little misconception. The exam was not just graded on only villain points. How can a hero course reject people who save others and do the right thing? All Might proclaimed. So all the candidates were graded on rescue and self-sacrifice, and so rescue points were awarded too. 60 points for you, 𝗵𝘃𝗄𝗵𝗺, and 45 points for her. Izuku's breath hitched, too scared to let himself hope. You both pass. Bakugo Katsuki. Bakugo Katsuki was pissed. Well, actually he was jealous, which led him to be pissed because there should be nothing in this world for him to be jealous of. He was sitting at his desk. Class hadn't started yet, so those 2 extras who followed him around were hovering near him. Katsuki wasn't paying attention to whatever they were talking about, his mind more focused on the many ways he could fiddle with the pin he was holding, when all of a sudden extra number 1 cut off mid-sentence and gasped. Katsuki looked up to see the extra staring at his left arm as he shakily pushed his sleeve up. The 3 of them stared down at the arm as words slowly formed upon trembling skin. 26/03/XX, Geography Essay Due. Holy shit, extra number 2 whispered incredulously. I can't believe it, extra number 1 murmured, gaping down at his arm. Congrats, dude. It's your left arm too. That means it's your romantic soulmate. Extra number 2 said teasingly. What do I write back? Do you think they've also realized what's just happened? Katsuki rolled his eyes and said, well, obviously not if the first thing they've said to their soulmate is the due date for an assignment. Put something like, good luck. Extra number 2 suggested eagerly. Give me your pen, Katsuki. Katsuki scoffed but handed his pen nonetheless, watching as his friend carefully wrote on his left arm under the previous message. His cheeks tinged pink. They all eyed the arm waiting for the next message when the bell rang, making them jump. The 2 extras hurried to their desks as class began. Extra number 2 pulling down his sleeve. About 10 minutes into class, Katsuki saw his friend jump a little in his seat and watched him innocuously tug at his sleeve. A small smile formed at the corner of his mouth as he read the writing on his forearm, and he began clicking his pen as he contemplated his response. That's when Katsuki felt the jealousy begin to bubble under his skin. It felt ugly and embarrassing. Katsuki tried his damn hardest to hide his true feelings about soulmates. Outwardly, he claimed that soulmates were useless and annoying. Who would want someone else's scribbles on their arms? Soul connections were just an irritating side effect of having a quirk. All that mattered was becoming the strongest hero, and anyone who had the time to spare to think about soulmates wasn't working hard enough. After all, even All Might, the #1 pro hero, doesn't write to his soulmate. Inwardly, he also tried to suppress his true feelings regarding soulmates. He was embarrassed, even in the privacy of his own mind. Deep down, however, Katsuki couldn't help but long to be connected to his soulmate already. Platonic, romantic, he didn't care. As long as it was someone who got him, someone who genuinely liked him. He couldn't help but crave that idea of having someone, a soulmate, who was his perfect match. Ever since he got his quirk, Katsuki has never had anyone he truly considered his friend. The kids who did want to be his friend were only sucking up to him because of his strong quirk and popularity. He could guarantee it was never because they actually liked him, and it was clear a lot of them couldn't stand his shitty personality. In fact, the only person he could think of that genuinely liked him and wanted to be friends with him was Deku. Katsuki scoffed, and his irritation became more pronounced. He remembered when he and Deku were 4 years old, pretending to be heroes at the local park. He shamefully remembered thinking, hoping, that Deku would be his soulmate. And then that day Deku told him he was quirkless, nervously playing with the hem of his shirt, not meeting Katsuki's eyes. Katsuki's stomach had sunk with disappointment. He knew for certain that Deku wouldn't be his soulmate because his soulmate wouldn't be weak and quirkless. His disappointment quickly turned into anger and animosity. He couldn't help but hate Deku for being quirkless. Deku was useless at a lot of things, catching bugs, skipping stones, kicking balls, and he just had to be useless at having a quirk too. Katsuki wasn't shy about making his hatred for Deku known, yet Deku didn't seem to care. Deku would still chase after him, still try to be his friend, despite how many explosions he sent his way. It made Katsuki despise him even more. Everything about Deku made Katsuki hate him. His quirklessness, his admiration for Katsuki, him following him everywhere, his forgiveness every time Katsuki gave him a beating, the way he still tries to be a hero despite being weak. Katsuki was gritting his teeth and clenching his fists, seething with anger. His jealousy smothered. That's all right, Katsuki thought. Anger was better than jealousy. An explosion burst sharply from his clenched fist. Everyone's eyes turned to him. Everything okay, Bakugo? The teacher asked hesitantly. Yeah, sorry, accident, Katsuki ground out. Katsuki kicked a grimy soda bottle on the ground in frustration. Take a swan dive off the roof and pray you'll be born with a quirk in your next life. Maybe you'll reincarnate with a soul this time too. He didn't really mean to say that. He just wanted to get a reaction out of him. Deku was getting too comfy with ignoring him, choosing to stare at him like Katsuki was an idiot. It pissed him off. Katsuki was still dealing with the jealousy. After being forced to hear all about his friend's boring conversation with his soulmate, he impulsively took his frustrations out on the nerd by implying that he didn't have a soul. Even Katsuki could admit that was harsh because, if there was ever anyone to surely have a soul, it had to be that crybaby Deku. Katsuki got his reaction. Deku staring at him with those big, watery eyes. Katsuki had felt something stir in his gut. Guilt. He had snarled threateningly to smother the feeling and quickly hurried out into the hallway. But he didn't hurry quick enough, and he heard a muffled sob come from the classroom, as if Deku had tried to quieten himself. The guilty feeling hit Katsuki tenfold. Hey, Katsuki, aren't you and 𝗵𝗃𝗍 childhood friends? Extra number 1 asked, smirking. You went a little overboard today, extra number 2 said. Katsuki's eye twitched. He didn't need his shitty friends to tell him that. It's his fault for getting in my way, Katsuki grumbled. Was he getting in your way? Extra number 1 asked tauntingly. He couldn't even say anything to defend himself. You didn't need to go that far, extra number 2 added in. I think he's realized just how pathetic his dreams of becoming a hero are. Their voices grated on Katsuki's nerves, and he gritted his teeth. I was just clarifying that you don't need to worry about me competing with you or whatever. I don't plan on going to UA or becoming a hero. Katsuki scoffed. It seemed like the nerd really was starting to give up on his lifelong dream. He felt something stir in his gut at the thought of going to school without Deku. Like something was wrong. Like he needed to keep the nerd close. Wait, what the fuck? Katsuki promptly blew up his empty coffee can in indignation at the idea that Deku had to be anywhere near him. Fucking finally, Katsuki snarled. His response was delayed but went unnoticed by his friends. He pisses me off so much. Then why don't we go to the arcade for a change of pace? Extra number 1 suggested. You'll come too, right, Katsuki? Yeah. Then let's go to the one in front the station. There's lots of prey there. Extra number 2 drawled. Huh? Katsuki demanded. If we get caught, it'll end up on my record. Katsuki was not risking his place in UA because of these two fucking losers. Hey, look, his friends yelled, pointing. Katsuki turned. A giant, slimy, formless entity loomed above them. A villain. Eyes and colossal teeth came into focus. Its target appeared to be Katsuki, an invisible cloak with a great quirk. Its guttural voice sounded gleeful. Before Katsuki could act, the villain lunged for him. Katsuki did the only thing he could. He screamed and fired his quirk. And fired. And fired. He screamed at the villain's audacity to try and victimize him. Katsuki was going to be the number 1 hero. He wasn't someone who needed the heroes to fight the villain for him. He was going to become the hero who eradicates worthless villains. His quirk trumps every other quirk. Katsuki was invincible. So why can't I fucking incinerate this bastard? Katsuki thought in frustration. Why does it feel like I'm drowning? The streets were ablaze. Civilians were screaming. The villain was cackling in joy. The villain was taking advantage of Katsuki's quirk. Katsuki knew this, but his body was in pure fight or flight mode. Flight wasn't an option, so all he had left was fight. He fired his quirk with all he had, but it was all in vain. Heroes were now arriving and quickly realizing they couldn't penetrate the villain's body. Don't come near me, the villain laughed maniacally. I won't let scum like this swallow me. Katsuki roared in outrage. Katsuki's vision was obscured from all the gunk encasing his body. However, he caught sight of policemen herding crowds back. What the fuck are they doing gawking at me? He also glimpsed 𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗲 carrying civilians away, including his friends. Katsuki forgot that they were here too, watching this inferior villain try and swallow him. Katsuki's shitty friends who looked up to him, who followed him, who admired him for his power. This was fucking humiliating. All we can do is wait for a hero with a more suitable quirk. Katsuki heard a hero say in frustration. They're leaving me? Katsuki thought helplessly. He didn't know how much longer he could resist giving in to the black spots that were already flashing across his vision. Kaken. Katsuki's eyelids wrenched open at the sound of his nickname. There's only one person who calls me that. He saw a figure running towards him, then launching a lurid yellow backpack at the villain, and missing. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃. Katsuki screamed incredulously. To Deku's credit, he may have missed with his backpack, but he landed a solid hit to the villain with one of his notebooks, allowing Katsuki to breath for a second and demand what the fuck this idiot was playing at. Why are you here? Kaken demanded angrily. I have no idea. My legs just moved on their own. Deku screamed in response, helplessly trying to dig through the villain's fluid body. That's not going to work, idiot, Katsuki thought helplessly. You need to get away, get away. Get the fuck away before this sludge bastard gets you too. You looked like you were asking for help, Deku stammered weakly, tears welling his eyes. Those big, green eyes. Katsuki's own eyes widened, and he stared at him. Stop it, he choked out. Why are you being so nice? I don't deserve it. This is all going to be in vain. Just a little longer. Don't get in my way, the villain fumed, raising a threatening limb. Heroes scrambled in a panic. He'll die in vain. Is he suicidal? Deku raised an arm to his face, flinching defensively, and waited for the attack. 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗧𝗵𝗃, get away. Katsuki screamed. He felt feral. He wanted to scream and shout and beg Deku to get away, and he didn't know why. His body was running on reflexes he didn't know he had. An indescribable feeling of not him, anyone but him. The blow didn't get him. Blinking frantically, All Might came into view. He was saying things to Deku that Katsuki couldn't hear, but dear God, he prayed All Might was telling him what a fucking idiot he was. All Might, the villain screamed. Detroit smash. All Might bellowed. blasting through the villain with ease. Katsuki's ears were ringing. He was laying on the concrete, relishing in the feeling in his body of being free, of being able to inhale deep lungfuls of air with ease. There was another feeling in his body, one he could only describe as relief, but not relief relating to physically being free or mentally knowing he was safe now. This was a different kind of relief that he could feel so intently in his gut. The feeling only intensified when he looked to his side and saw Deku, scratched and bruised up, but breathing. "What's wrong with me?" he questioned absently. Since when do I care so much about Deku? If he got hurt by that sludge bastard, it would serve him right, because what the fuck was he thinking? Katsuki glanced over at Deku getting lectured by the heroes, looking like a quivering, pathetic mess. Meanwhile, reporters and paramedics were spouting meaningless praise about how brave he was. Katsuki thought back to the cold dread and fear he felt when he thought that the heroes would just abandon him. Thought back to how helpless he felt when his quirk did nothing to fight off the villain. Thought back to the dread he felt for Deku's safety. He didn't feel very brave. If anything, he was pissed at Deku. He clenched his fists and jaw, and bolted after the green-haired loser, making his wretched walk home. "Deku," he bellowed. Deku turned to look at him in confusion. "Kaken?" Katsuki took a deep breath and bellowed. "I never asked you for help, and you didn't help. Got it? I was fine by myself. You're a quirkless failure playing without a full deck. Don't think you can look down on me. Are you trying to make me owe you? Don't look down on me. You damn nerd." Deku blinked at him in bemusement, and Katsuki found himself feeling embarrassed about his impulsive rant. He growled and stormed off. He was sick of this pathetic, quirkless, hopeless nerd making him feel so awkward without even saying a word. Who the fuck does he think he is? Fury made itself home in Katsuki in the twitching of his eye, the shaking of his fists, the clenching of his jaw. "I can't believe we have 2 students from our school who've managed to score a place at UA," the principal had raved. "Especially you, Midoriya. It's a miracle." Deku jolted, straightening where he stood, his cheeks reddening. Katsuki snarled. How the fuck did that useless, quirkless shithead make it onto the UA hero course? It would be one thing for Deku to be accepted onto general studies, or even the support course, but the shitty extra has somehow managed to make it onto the hero course? Even Nakamura, the only person in their class whose quirk rivaled Katsuki's in power, didn't manage to make it into UA. Yet Deku, quirkless fucking Deku, somehow gets a place, easy fucking peasy. Something smelt fishy, and it wasn't the microwave of the teacher's room. The moment the two of them managed to get away from the principal, Katsuki shoved Deku roughly against the wall behind the school and seized hold of his uniform. "What dirty tricks did you use to get in, huh?" Katsuki demanded. "The first student from his school to go to UA. My future plan has already been torn to fucking pieces. Did I not fucking tell you to go somewhere else, huh, shitty Deku?" A hand clasped his wrist, and despite himself, Katsuki found himself vaguely marveling over the strength of the grip. It occurred to him then that perhaps the entrance exams were the reason why Deku was working out all of a sudden. He'd be an idiot not to notice how Deku, who would usually be wheezing at the back of their PE class during their warm-up runs, began to linger in the middle, slowly inching further and further to the front where Katsuki was. Not to mention the glimpses of Deku's now muscled body he caught in the changing rooms afterwards, a jarring change from the weedy fuck he was before. At the time, Katsuki thought that perhaps Deku was working out because of what happened with the sludge incident, making up for his quirklessness with physical strength. A part of Katsuki felt a spark of pride that Deku was working on something more actionable than his shitty notebooks. Certainly, he felt his competitiveness blaze during their PE classes. However, this feeling of competitiveness felt different at times when he heard Deku was going to go to UA and be a hero. It didn't feel like a get-out-of-my-way competitiveness, but a satisfying competitiveness instead. It was satisfying to be neck and neck with Deku in class. It made Katsuki want to try harder. Maybe it was because Katsuki already knew Deku was never going to be a hero, so it wasn't as satisfying when he did exceed Deku in that area because it was already a given. With physical strength, however, they both had an even playing field. They both had the ability to improve and exceed each other. Someone told me, 𝗧𝗵𝗃𝗲 voice wavered. You can become a hero, that it was because of my own effort. That's why I got into UA. My own effort. Katsuki assumed that was referring to Deku's training. However, effort or not, Katsuki was certain that physical strength alone was not enough to grant someone a spot on the UA hero course. Something still fucking reeked, and he was going to figure it out. Katsuki watched in grim satisfaction as Deku consistently came last throughout all their physical fitness tests. I knew it, Katsuki smirked. There's nothing special about Deku whatsoever. He's just somewhat physically fit, but still completely fucking useless. It doesn't look good for Midoriya if he continues like this, a classmate murmured worriedly next to him. Katsuki furrowed his brow in bewilderment. Huh. Of course not. He's just a quirkless extra, you know? Quirkless. Glasses sputtered in disbelief. Are you not aware of what he did in the entrance exam? Huh. Am I missing out on something? Just what the fuck did Deku pull in the entrance exam that's got all these extras thinking he's something special? Katsuki straightened and watched carefully as Deku drew his arm back and braced himself to throw. 46 meters. Aizawa's tracker bleeped out. Katsuki huffed. Just as expected. I erased your quirk, Aizawa glowered. Eyes glowing red, hair billowing around him. That entrance exam was definitely not rational enough. Even a kid like you was accepted. From what I can tell, you can't control your quirk at all, can you? Do you intend to become incapacitated again and have someone save you? Katsuki was beginning to feel frustrated. Just what the fuck was Aizawa talking about? What does he mean that Deku can't control his quirk? He doesn't even have a quirk to control, right? Even if you have the valor, Aizawa continued, you'll just be decked and turned into a useless Deku after saving one person. Midoriya Izuku. With your power, you can't become a hero. Aizawa backed away from Deku. I've returned your quirk. Hurry up with your ball throw, Aizawa said dismissively. Deku began muttering incoherently. A nervous and compulsive habit Katsuki had realized over the years. It appeared something snapped in Deku, for he suddenly braced himself to throw the ball. Teeth bared in grimace, brow furrowed determinedly. Then, with enough force to blow his hair back, Deku launched the ball. Katsuki could hear the sound of the air whipping from the force of the ball rocketing across the field, dust blowing backwards. A collective cry of shock emanated from Class A. Then silence. 705.3 meters, bleeped the tracker, the electronic voice ringing out into the silence. Sensei, Deku called, face pale and clammy. He clenched his fist, the one he threw with, the one whose index finger was now a mottled purple color, as if the very force of throwing the ball shattered the bones. I can still move, Deku forced out. A pained yet determined grimace painted his face. Aizawa grinned in awe. Or maybe it was a grimace. It was difficult to tell, really. His classmates were cheering, but Katsuki's world was shaken. He was frozen, jaw dropped in sheer incredulity. How? How is everyone acting so normal about this? Where did he get such incredible power from? Everyone's quirks manifest by the age of 4. This makes no sense. What is the meaning of this? Katsuki demanded, charging forward, explosions at the ready to force Deku to spill. Tell me what the fuck is going on, Deku. You bastard. Deku squeaked in fear, and his arms shot up to protect himself. It need not have mattered, for Katsuki was stopped in place by hard white bandages. He struggled, trying to look back and see which fucker had ensnared him. These cloths are weapons for capture, made of carbon fiber woven together with metal wire made of a special alloy. Aizawa grumbled darkly. Geez, don't keep making me use my quirk over and over again. I have dry eyes. Deku hesitantly backed away, whilst keeping his eyes warily on Katsuki. Like Katsuki was even going to bother testing Aizawa's patience again. He wasn't going to be expelled before he found out just what the fuck was going on with Deku. Until a little while ago, he was just a pebble on the side of the road. You're so lucky, Kakin. Your quirk is so cool. I hope I get mine soon. Izuku exclaimed in awe, trailing behind Katsuki. Katsuki smirked. No matter what quirk you get, you'll never beat me. A pebble. Did Deku lie to me about being quirkless? He thinks he's so much better than me that he lied about being quirkless. Okay, I'll quickly tell you the results from the tests, Izawa announced flatly. As expected, Deku's name was dead last. 20. Midoriya Izuku. Finally, Deku's expulsion. Katsuki smirked. Something to brighten up his day. By the way, I was lying about the expulsion, Izawa grinned. It was a rational deception to draw out the upper limits of your quirks. What? Everyone exclaimed, including Katsuki. Of course that was a lie, one of the girls said. It should have been obvious if you just thought it through. Katsuki clenched his teeth. For fuck's sake. He shook his head. He'd confront Deku another time. Now was the time to focus on his results and see who he was up against. Much to Katsuki's dismay, he was third. 1. Yaoyorozu Momo. 2. Todoroki Shudo. 3. Bakugo Katsuki. Yaoyorozu, that's the ponytail girl who called us out for being gullible. TCH, the smartass of the class. And Todoroki, that's the ice guy who's Endeavor's son. He grimaced. Yue had some tough competition, which was to be expected. He knew who he had to beat now at least. Katsuki smirked, a little bounce in his step. This was the first time he was trying on his hero suit, and God, it felt good. He could just feel the sheer power held within his suit, within his gauntlets, within his grenades. He itched to get going and test all his gear out already. His suit was the complete opposite to Deku's basic costume. Katsuki sneered. It looked like a standard sports suit that he stuck. Ears? What are those? To Anne was calling it a hero costume. That wasn't going to protect him for shit, at least. Not if Katsuki had anything to do with it. Deku was currently blushing over the round-faced girl showing off her hero costume, and a spark of frustration lit in Katsuki. Why is Deku fawning over her and her shitty costume? Why hasn't he noticed mine yet? Why isn't he rambling about what a good idea getting gauntlets and grenades was? TCH. Trust Deku to drool over tits in a skin-tight bodysuit instead of something practical like my costume. Katsuki didn't know why he cared so much, but he did and did a lot. He chalked up to residual anger from finding out about Deku's quirk the day before. He was probably just wanting Deku to notice what he had in store for him when Katsuki destroyed him. He grinned ferally as All Might drew names for their 2-on-2 battles. He was on Team D and paired with the glasses guy. He better not get in my way, Katsuki thought darkly as he eyed his partner. The first teams to fight will be All Might drew his fists forth from the villain and hero boxes, and Katsuki inhaled sharply. D and A. Team A was Deku's team, and he was paired with that girl he was drooling over. Team A will be the heroes, and Team D will be the villains. Oh, Katsuki thought gleefully, it must be fate. Me up against Deku and that damn girl he won't take his fucking eyes off of. I can destroy them both. He turned to glower at Deku, who was already looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Deku met his eyes, flinched, and looked away. Then, it appeared something switched in his head, and he clenched his fists and turned to meet Katsuki's glare head-on. Katsuki's breath hitched. To his horror, he felt apprehensive. He wasn't quite sure what was in store for him. Hey, Katsuki called over to his partner. Deku has a quirk, right? Glasses tilted his head in confusion. You saw that extraordinary strength, didn't you? It appears to carry a lot of risk, though. He then paused and added, you seem to be especially angry when it comes to Midoriya. Angry? He was fucking livid. He has been lied to all this time, and he was going to make Deku pay. Bakugo, his partner called when Katsuki had begun marching to the door, intent on hunting down Deku. Where are you going? We need to work together and come up with a plan. Shut up, Katsuki grumbled. You stay here and guard the missile. I'm off to find that shitty nerd. Ensuring his steps were quiet, he hurried down the hallways, focusing intently on what sounds he could hear. Not before long, he heard Deku and Round Face muttering to each other. Adrenaline shot through Katsuki, every nerve in his body alight as he shot forward and fired an explosion. The smoke settled to reveal that Deku had managed to avoid the brunt of the explosion, but his shitty hero costume didn't fare as well, revealing a scowl and narrowed eyes. He stood protectively in front of Round Face, who was on the floor, Deku likely having pushed her away. Frustration flooded Katsuki at the sight, and he growled, Come on, Deku, don't doge. I figured you'd come for me first, Deku answered just as darkly. I won't do so much damage that this fight gets stopped, but I sure as hell am gonna get close. Katsuki charged forward, arm raised at the ready. To his horror, Deku also charged forward and gripped Katsuki's right arm. Before he knew it, everything flipped before Katsuki's eyes and he was thrown harshly on his back, the wind leaving his lungs. What the fuck? Did he read my moves? He thought in horror. Katsuki struggled to sit up, forcing his lungs to inhale. He heard the girl cheer in awe. Bakugo, Deku panted behind him. You usually start with a big right swing. Do you know how much I've been watching you? I wrote an analysis for all the heroes I thought were amazing in my notebook, including you. The very notebook you blew up that day, remember? How could Katsuki forget anything that happened that day? The notebook carelessly tossed out of a window, the muffled sob echoing from the classroom, hands digging panically through sludge. My Deku isn't always going to mean useless. I'm gonna make sure it means you can do it. Katsuki forced himself to his feet, meeting Deku head-on. He was shaking with anger at the sheer audacity of Deku talking back to him, acting like he was strong, like he was brave, like Katsuki was beneath him. Even though you're scared, you're still fucking talking to me like that? Katsuki seethed. That's what I fucking hate about you. He charged forward and at the same time, Deku yelled, 𝗎𝙢𝙢𝙢𝗢𝗍, go! Katsuki couldn't spare any thought for her right now. Glasses could deal with her. He aimed a kick at Deku but was brought off balance. He caught sight of the capture tape Deku currently had ensnared around his leg. To combat that, Katsuki swung forward with his right arm, ready to fire an explosion in Deku's face. Except, his explosion ended up firing against the wall, Deku just managing to dodge in the nick of time. Katsuki was furious, but he forced himself to hold back. TCH, that fucking nerd. Reading my moves, fucking creep. Watching me all those years, taking all those fucking notes. FUCK. I should have burnt those shitty notebooks years ago. Before Katsuki could even plan his next move, Deku ran off. He charged after him, but couldn't determine which way he went in the maze of corridors. Despite Deku getting the better of him by calculating his moves, despite him getting into UA, despite him trying to fight back against Katsuki even though he was shitting his pants, there was one thing that pissed Katsuki off more than anything about Deku hiding his quirk from him. You tricked me, didn't you? Katsuki demanded. Was it fun tricking me all this time? I think my soulmate is probably Izuku, Katsuki hummed happily, watching small sparks sputter from his palms. His mother and father glanced at each, smiling in amusement. Oh yeah? His mum said amusedly, ruffling his hair. Why do you say that? Because Izuku's my best friend, duh. Who else is it gonna be? His father tooted. Katsuki, it could be anyone. You might not have even met them yet. No. Katsuki yelled, cutting his father off. It's Izuku. I know it. Kaken, the doctor. Deku fidgeted with the hem of his t-shirt. Katsuki furrowed his brow. What was he so nervous about? He's just a late developer, right? He said I'm quirkless. Silence. Then the reality sank in for Katsuki and he felt angry. He felt disappointed. He was so sure his soulmate was Deku and yet, maybe his parents were right. His soulmate really could be anyone. It certainly wasn't Deku. Katsuki let out a scream of frustration. You've got a flashy quirk there, huh, Deku? Try and get me with it. All this time, he lied to me and Katsuki allowed himself the shameful thought. Just this once before he destroyed Deku. And it could be him. It could still be him. Deku could still be my soulmate. Katsuki turned a corner and caught sight of Green, crouched on the floor. Deku, found you, nerd. He fired a small warning explosion, and Deku jolted, turning to him. Katsuki raised his gauntlets. They're loaded, he warned. Bakugo. Deku braced himself. Why won't you use your quirk? Katsuki demanded. Are you implying you can win, even if you don't use it? Are you underestimating me, Deku? I'm not scared of you anymore. Katsuki clenched his teeth and fists. With your stalking, you probably already know that my quirk lets me secrete nitroglycerin sweat from my palms and makes it explode. If they made these gauntlets the way that I asked, Then they'll store my nitroglycerin inside them. Just as Katsuki was about to pull the pin, All Might's voice sounded through his earpiece. Bakugo 𝗬𝗪𝗏, stop. Are you trying to kill him? If I don't hit him, he won't die. He took All Might's subsequent lack of response as permission. Deku began trembling. Is that even allowed? It was then that a reflex inside Katsuki told him to stop. He frowned. He was in too far to think about stopping now. Still, there was a feeling inside him that had him second-guessing. Hesitating, something warning him against doing this. That he'd kill Deku. Nerves, Katsuki told himself firmly. Just nerves. I'm not chickening out now. Absolutely fucking not. Going against his instincts, Katsuki released the pin, and boom. The sheer force of the explosion tore away the walls. Smoke billowed everywhere. Obscuring Katsuki's vision, rubble crumbled to the floor. Despite the ringing in his ears and the pain in his shoulder from the recoil, Katsuki bared his teeth in a wide grin. Holy shit, he thought in awe. This is perfect. Exactly what I wanted. The more sweat that's stored in the gauntlets, the stronger the blast. He sauntered through the thick smoke. Summon, use your quirk. Deku, I'll force you to surrender even if you're at full strength. As he emerged from the smoke, he saw Deku cowering on the floor, wincing. He looked fine, aside from the fact that more of his costume had singed away and a few scrapes and bruises. He could still get up and stand at least. Katsuki pointedly ignored the relief he felt in his gut. Hey, what's up, Deku? Katsuki drawled. I didn't hit you, so you can still move, can't you? Come and get me. Deku ignored him and instead spoke into his earpiece. 𝗬𝗪𝗏, what's the situation? Katsuki shook with fury. He raised his other gauntlet, finger hooking in the pin. Ignoring me again, Deku? I can't fucking believe you. All Might's voice sounded in his earpiece again, making him halt. Bakugo 𝗬𝗪𝗏, the next time you use that, I'll stop the fight, and your team will lose. Huh? To attack on such a large scale inside is inviting the destruction of the stronghold you should be protecting. That is a foolish plan for both heroes and villains. You will lose a lot of points for it. Katsuki huffed. He has almost forgotten this was still a lesson. Damn it. I just want to fight Deku with no strings attached. Ugh, whatever. He charged forward. Let's fight it out with our fists. Try reading this shitty deck. Instead of firing with his right, Katsuki fired with his left. Deku let out a shout. Katsuki flew over Deku and fired another explosion at Deku's exposed back. Satisfaction boiled his blood. It's your favorite right swing, Deku, he screamed. Deku tried to slam him to the floor again, but Katsuki had learnt that trick already. He swung Deku around using all his force and strength before proceeding to launch him harshly to the ground. Below me. Deku wheezed and coughed harshly, but still managed to get to his knees. However, instead of fighting back, he began running away. He was cornered, though, his back to the wall as Katsuki stalked towards him. Why won't you use your quirk? Katsuki demanded. Even now, Deku was still trying to hide it from him. You've been like this ever since we were kids. Have you been underestimating me like that since then, you bastard? That's not it. Deku ground out, face directed towards the ground. Then, he looked up and Katsuki saw the tears welling in his eyes. Why, you're an amazing person, and that's why I want to beat you. I want to win and surpass you. You idiot. Katsuki ground his teeth. Fucking crybaby. Don't look at me like that, fucking nerd. They both ran towards each other, and it felt like it was time. Finally, Deku was going to use his quirk against him. But then Deku screamed, "J, ready 𝗬𝗪𝗏," and twisted his wrist to aim his fist for the ceiling. Smiles. With a thundering blast, the force of Deku's punch blew through at least 5 floors. Katsuki gaped upwards, speechless at the unbelievable brute force of his quirk. Deku had been hiding this from me? You are underestimating me, aren't you? I wasn't going to use it, Beck, because I can't use it. My body can't handle the impact. Aizawa-sensei said so too, remember? Deku's bones were shattered, evident from the mottled purple staining his arms, and he looked like he was barely clinging to consciousness. Katsuki was harshly reminded of Deku's finger after their physical fitness tests. This was all I could think of. Katsuki gaped in horror. Deku looked like a broken doll. Hero team wins, All Might announced, as Deku lost consciousness. Katsuki marched stiffly towards the school gates, ready to go home, scream at his parents, maybe throw something, and wallow for the rest of the day. He'd been unable to concentrate for the rest of the day after having lost to Deku despite going all out, being roasted by the ponytail girl, the one he should be watching out for, and being forced to watch that half-and-half icy hot son of a pro hero show off with his fancy-ass quirk, which to Katsuki's horror wasn't just ice, but fire too. The absolute sheer fucking power. Katsuki couldn't help but seethe with envy. A shout interrupted his brooding walk. Bakugo. Katsuki clenched his fists and stopped. Deku. He had to admit, hearing that irritating voice call his family name, as opposed to that cringy nickname, Kakin, was somehow more grating. What? Deku didn't answer. It appeared he was hesitating. Then, there's one thing I feel like I need to tell you. My quirk it's something I received from someone else. Katsuki turned then to look at Deku. He was looking less bruised and scraped, but his right arm was in a cast, and his left arm mummified in bandages. Huh. I can't say who I got it from, though. That's one secret I can't spill. But it's like a story out of, comic books? Except it's true. On top of that, I can't even control it properly. It's just borrowed power that I haven't made my own yet. Katsuki's brow furrowed. What's he talking about? That's why I was, trying to beat you without it. Not because I underestimated you. That would be dumb of me. But anyway, in the end I couldn't win and had to rely on it. And well, look at me now. I've still got a long way to go. That's why one day I'll make this quick my own and beat you with my own power. Deku stopped himself there, as if he had said too much. As if what he had just said made any sense at all. What the fuck are you talking about? Katsuki growled. Borrowed power? Are you taking the piss out of me, rambling on about some bullshit like that? Huh? What are you even trying to say? Today I lost to you, that's all. I'm just getting started, you hear? I will be number one. You won't beat me again, bastard. To Katsuki's horror, he was crying. Fuck. This was why he needed to get home instead of being distracted by stupid nerds. There he is, someone shouted a short distance away. It was All Might. Bakugo shounen. Once All Might had caught up to them, he rested his hands on Katsuki's shoulders as he inconspicuously tried to dry his eyes on his sleeve. Bakugo shounen. Just so you know, pride is important. You definitely have the abilities needed to become a pro. Katsuki scoffed. The last thing he wanted to hear right now was a motivational pep talk from a teacher. Let go of me, All Might, he ground out. I can't walk. I'll become a hero that surpasses you. I don't need you to tell me that. Huh. All Might hesitated before releasing him. Right. Katsuki marched off, still drying his eyes off. It wasn't like he was upset. They were just tears of frustration. Doesn't matter. He was only just getting started anyway. He'd soon prove to them all who was the strongest. Katsuki laid on his bed, staring up at his forearm, pen in hand. Since coming home, and then promptly being kicked out by his mother who, upon hearing him slam the front door and seeing his scowl, demanded he take a walk and cool off before dinner. Curiosity had been consuming him. Now that he knew Deku had a quirk, he at least wanted to make sure. Even though he was certain that Deku wasn't his soulmate considering how much Katsuki despised him. But if he is my soulmate, do I really want to know? Ugh, hi. Katsuki groaned out loud. There was also the matter of which arm to write on. Left or right, left or right, left or right? Left for romantic, right for platonic? Which would Deku be? Katsuki's face heated at the thought of getting an answer on his left, and what if it was from Deku? Fucking disgusting, Katsuki said resolutely. Damn it. I might not even have both. It might just be one. And if it's one, it would be platonic, right? Arg. Why am I thinking so much about this? He wasn't even sure if Deku even cared about soulmates. Growing up, he had never heard the nerd talk about soulmates. Granted, Katsuki did try his best to stay the hell away from Deku, silencing the nerd whenever he spoke in his presence. However, Deku mostly just rambled about heroes. One would think that a nerd obsessed with quirks would also be obsessed with soulmates too, right? If Deku was his soulmate, Katsuki was almost certain that Deku would be writing to him nonstop like a fucking loser. He wouldn't be able to stop talking about it at school either. As if Deku could get any more fucking obsessed with me, he scoffed. After a few more minutes of ruminating, he sat up determinedly. He would write one word on each arm and call it a fucking day. Before he could talk himself out of it, Katsuki ripped off the pen lid with his teeth and wrote on both inner forearms in red ink, Oi Bakugo Katsuki. About 20 minutes after Katsuki had written on his arms and had proceeded to scrub his arms clean of any ink out of embarrassment, he felt a strange tingling on right arm. He scratched absently at it, paying no mind. He then felt a strange feeling of excitement and awe, which he thought was unusual as he was currently feeling frustrated at losing at his stupid video game. Foreign is how Katsuki would describe it. Those emotions weren't his. They didn't belong to him. He rubbed his chest uncomfortably. The feelings of excitement and awe left as quickly as they came, but a sense of unease lingered within him. He scratched at his right arm again when, wait a second. Realization hit Katsuki and his controller clattered to the ground as shock flooded through him. Almost trance-like, he slowly looked down at his arm, eyes wide, heart pounding. He inhaled sharply. That's not my handwriting. Dude, is this a soul mark? Katsuki licked his thumb and rubbed at the writing, but it would not budge, as if it were tattooed permanently onto his skin. The ink was dark and fresh, as if Katsuki had just freshly written onto his arm, before sweat and moisture had the chance to smudge it away. He inhaled sharply again. That's a soul mark. That's my first soul mark. Katsuki did the only thing he could think of at that moment. Scream for his parents before running to the bathroom. His mother and father bounded into the bathroom frantically, the door slamming violently against the wall. Katsuki? What's wrong, Katsuki? Are you guys seeing this shit? Katsuki yelled panically. Suds slid down his right arm. The skin inflamed red as he scrubbed harshly with the washcloth clenched tight in his fist. Silence. Katsuki could almost hear the cogs whirring in his parents' brains as they fit the puzzle pieces together. His mother gasped. Masaru, his first soul mark. Quick, quick, go get the camera. She slapped excitedly at his dad's arm, pushing him out of the bathroom. Masaru stumbled but hurried nonetheless, shouting as he went, Wait, was the soul mark on his left or right arm? It's on his right arm. Mitsuki bellowed in response. Platonic. Oh, that's lovely. Stop fucking shouting about it. Katsuki screamed, embarrassment heating his face. Katsuki half-heartedly protested when his father returned with the camera, but he didn't stop them from taking pictures. He wanted to remember the moment too. Yeah, it is. OMG, that's so cool, bro. Again, the foreign feelings of excitement and awe flooded Katsuki's chest. A small shock ran through him as he contemplated if they were their emotions. Oi! He called over to his parents. Is it normal to feel the other person's emotions? They both looked down at his arm before turning to smirk at each other. Katsuki scowled. He was going to have to start wearing long sleeves around these fuckers if they kept this up. Yeah, it is, Masaru answered warmly. When you open a soul connection with ink, you share your feelings too. Katsuki blinked and furrowed his brow. He tried to focus on what he was feeling right now. Frustration and embarrassment at his parents. Curiosity. And another emotion. One Katsuki felt a little spark of every time he looked down at his arm, and which served only to embarrass him further. Affection. Katsuki let out a frustrated shout. Why? He demanded. That's none of their fucking business. They're your soulmate, Katsuki, his dad replied patiently, like that fucking meant anything. A thought crossed his mind then, the idea of Deku knowing what he was feeling, and he felt vehemently opposed to even considering that possibility. The idea of feeling what Deku was feeling. Gross. He's such a little freak. Not that Deku had written his soul marks. This person sounded nothing like Deku. He glanced down at his still bare left arm. He hadn't got a response on that side. Perhaps he wouldn't ever get a response from his left side. Maybe he only had his platonic soulmate. That thought left Katsuki feeling strangely incomplete and lonely. He didn't like it. He looked down quickly at his right arm, subtle affection warming his heart again. Who cares? He thought firmly. At least they responded to me. I feel like I have a million things I want to say and ask you, but I have no idea where to begin. Mixed feelings of unsurety and excitement sparked in Katsuki as bold, straight letters appeared across his skin. He felt thrilled that they also were excited to talk to him, that he wasn't alone in his eagerness. It felt validating, made him feel less embarrassed. Watching the words materialize on his skin, the patchiness of the ink, the letters misshapen by the drag of pen on flesh, the pauses in between words, leaving Katsuki staring at his arm, wondering excitedly what the completed sentence is going to say. It was almost hypnotizing. What are you doing in school? I'm training to be a hero. What about you? Delight and excitement thrummed in Katsuki, and he couldn't stop a big grin from spreading across his face. Just like I fucking thought. Of course my soulmate's gonna be a hero with a strong-ass quirk, like they were gonna be anything less. Same here. No way, dude. That's super manly. Familiarity itched at Katsuki then at the word manly, and he furrowed his brow. Manly. He couldn't quite put his finger on why. What's your quirk? After 2 minutes of no response, he wondered vaguely if his soulmate had fallen asleep and felt disappointed. He wanted to talk a little more. After 10 minutes, he felt a tingling on his right upper arm and he jerked, eyes darting down instantly. Feelings like uncertainty and discomfort shifted unpleasantly in his chest. What had made his soulmate feel like that? Hey bro, my parents think we shouldn't tell each other personal stuff like our names and quirks and stuff. Don't take it personal or anything. I'd love to talk about our quirks, but quirks are identifiable, so. It's not a very flashy, exciting quirk anyway, haha. Katsuki doubted that, if this person was going to be a hero. Of course it probably wasn't as cool as his, but it had to be something interesting. Whilst a part of Katsuki protested against keeping certain things private, feeling the impulsive desire to find out anything and everything about them, he understood that he was still a stranger to his soulmate. The last thing he wanted to do is freak his soulmate out when he only just started talking to them. That's fine. He hesitated. Sorry. Katsuki hated apologizing. Even though this was just one word and hardly an apology, he felt the unpleasant mix of awkward and being seen. However, at the same time, he didn't want his soulmate to think he was an asshole, so he swallowed his pride. He hoped that didn't pick up through his soulmate connection. Don't worry, it's cool. Did you see that fight between Hawks and that bat villain the other day? Katsuki pulled off his tie and shoved it in his locker, excited to get back into his hero costume. The soul marks on his right arm had mostly faded and were illegible now. However, the ones on his right leg, they'd moved on to writing on their legs when they ran out of space, were still bold and visible. Katsuki was a little relieved his costume covered his legs completely. He wasn't sure if he wanted the nosy fuckers in his class to see what he had been writing to his soulmate. He had noticed that the length of time of which a soul mark stayed on his skin varied depending on how meaningful it was. An accidental smudge on his hand didn't stay longer than a few hours and would go mostly unnoticed until he caught sight of it. One of their proper conversations, however, would only start fading after half a day, fully disappearing after a full day or so. It was inconvenient, but Katsuki didn't mind. He liked looking back and rereading their conversations. "Aw," someone cooed teasingly behind him. "Look at all that writing." Katsuki glanced over his shoulder. The kid with the electric quirk, he doesn't remember his name, was pointing at the legs of 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃, one of the few classmates whose names he remembered. "Stop it, guys," 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃 said disapprovingly. "It's not manly to point out and stare at other people's soul marks." He rushed to pull his hero costume on which, whilst it left his torso bare, at least kept his legs concealed. A jolt went through Katsuki at the word manly. His soulmate liked to use that word a lot too. A coincidence, he figured. "What's your new best friend like then?" "The electric guy, Pikachu," Katsuki decided, teased. "You guys have been talking a lot. Do you even have any space left on your right side?" 𝗵𝗃𝗄𝗃, despite himself, couldn't hold back a grin. "Yeah, I guess we have been talking a lot," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck sheepishly. "He's just so manly and cool, and he gets all shy sometimes, Like I can feel it, and it's so cute. Oh, stop it. You're gonna make us all jealous. Unfortunately, Pikachu caught sight of Katsuki then and proceeded to march over to him. Katsuki turned his back resolutely with a huff, knowing where this was gonna go. It seems you've been getting really chatty with your soulmate too, Bakugo. Pikachu needled, poking at the faded ink on Katsuki's arm. Don't fucking touch me. One thing Katsuki had noticed since coming to UA was how decidedly not afraid of him everyone was. In middle school, Katsuki just had to look and the extras knew not to test his patience. In UA, however, he might as well be wearing a clown suit for all the use his threats had. It served as another reminder that Katsuki was up against the best and strongest in the country, and that he had to fight to make sure he stayed on top. They must be someone very special if they can tolerate that attitude, Pikachu snarked. Fuck off. He slammed his locker shut and stormed out of the changing rooms. That was exactly why Katsuki had waited all those years for his soul connection. Other people just didn't get him, always pushing him and then making snide comments when he told them to back off. His soulmate understood, though. For one, his soulmate never made shitty comments like that. He felt the itch to message them to calm himself down, or at least as a distraction, but he didn't have a fucking pin on him. Katsuki decided then that he would always make sure he had a pin on his person. Katsuki tapped his feet impatiently, waiting for Izuku and 13 to hurry up with their instructions. They were doing rescue training at USJ today, and, even though Katsuki would rather be training to destroy villains, he was interested to see how this lesson would pan out. Suddenly, a swirling purple vortex in front of them, and the class collectively tensed. 13 and Izuku also tensed in confusion, but Katsuki narrowed his eyes. He wasn't quite sure he trusted Izuku anymore, what with his regular, rational deceptions. It appeared his classmates carried the same sentiments as Kirishima asked, "What's that? Is this like the entrance exam where the lessons already started, or?" The class braced themselves, ready to face whatever came from the vortex, but Izuku quickly stopped them. "Don't move," he commanded, putting on his goggles. "Those are villains." Swarms of villains dropped into the training room, the vortex user in question and another guy with a mask on his face at the forefront. 13 and 𝗬𝗍𝗄𝗃, right? The vortex villain affirmed. The teacher's schedule we received the other day said All Might was also supposed to be here. Where is he? The other guy asked, scratching the skin of his neck irritably. Upon a closer look, Katsuki realized the mask on his face was in the shape of a hand. Creepy. After I went through the trouble of bringing this whole crowd, I can't believe All Might isn't here. Maybe he'll come if we kill some kids. He grinned gleefully, and the hordes of villains began advancing towards them. Villains? No way. There's no way they cowed get into a hero school. Kirishima exclaimed in disbelief. Sensei, what about the trespasser sensors? Yaoyorozu asked. We have them, of course, but 13 trailed off. Did they only appear here, or around the whole shoe? Todoroki asked. Either way, if the sensors are not responding, that must mean they have someone with a quirk that can bypass them. An isolated area separated from the main campus, during a time when a class is supposed to be here. They might be fools, but they're not dumb. This surprise attack was clearly planned with some sort of goal in mind. Katsuki scowled. It turned out he would be fucking up some villains during this training session. 13 start evacuation, Izuku commanded. Try calling the school. These villains even had something to counteract the sensors, so it's possible someone with the radio wave type powers is interfering. Kaminari, Izuku called to the electric guy. You try contacting the school with your quirk too. What about you, Sensei? Deku asked panically. Will you fight by yourself? With that many, even if you can erase their quirks, 𝗬𝗍𝗄𝗃's fighting style is capturing after erasing the enemy's quirk. You can't be a hero with just one trick, was all Izuku said in response. I'm leaving it to you, 13, he finished before running forward to fight the villains. The rest of them start running towards the exit. This is no time for analysis, he heard someone shout. Hurry up and take shelter. Let me guess, Deku? A quick glance over his shoulder told him he was correct. Fucking idiot. Just in front of them, however, a familiar swirling purple vortex manifested just before the exit. They were trapped. I won't let you leave, The Vortex warned. Nice to meet you. We are the League of Villains. It may be presumptuous of us, but we have invited ourselves into the home of heroes in order to have All Might, the symbol of peace, take his last breath. I believe he should be here. Has there been some kind of change? Katsuki had had enough of this fucker monologuing. In unison, as if they had planned it, he and Kirishima jumped forward in unison, attacking the villain with all they had. Did you consider that you'd get beaten by us before you did it? Kirishima taunted. As the smoke began to clear, however, it seemed their attack had little effect, the purple mist forming the villain collecting together again. Oh dear, that's dangerous, the villain mocked easily. Even if you are students, you are already excellent heroes in the making. Katsuki and Kirishima reeled back, already planning a second attack when they were immediately stopped by 13. No. Move away, you two. The Vortex chuckled. My job is to scatter you all and torture you to death. The villain's purple swirling vortex expanded and began smothering them all, obscuring their vision. Everyone screamed in surprise, disorientated and attempting to shield their eyes. Katsuki stumbled as he tried to keep his balance against the force of the wind whipping around them. Suddenly, he felt himself being lifted from his feet and everything going black. Before he knew it, he was falling midair towards a different part of the arena. He screamed as he hurtled downwards towards the roof of a lopsided, crumbling building, likely imitating an urban disaster zone. Bakugo! A voice shouted above him. Huh? Katsuki tried to wrench his body to see who had called him. He briefly caught sight of red hair and tan skin. Bakugo, grab my hand. Kirishima. Katsuki forced his body to turn midair through the momentum of falling, and he caught sight of Kirishima reaching out towards him. Gritting his teeth, he reached out, fingers just brushing his wrist. Somehow, Kirishima managed to reach forward and wrap a hand firmly around Katsuki's wrist. He was wrenched towards Kirishima and, before he could protest, he was pulled harshly towards the other's body. Kirishima then wrapped his arms firmly around his body, a protective hand over his head. Katsuki then felt Kirishima turn their bodies, so Kirishima would be the one receiving the impact when they landed. Just as he began shoving and protesting, he felt the arms around him and the bare chest he was held against harden. So that's his plan, huh? The realization stilled his writhing, and he grit his teeth and squeezed his eyes shut, mentally preparing for the impact. The combination of Kirishima's hardened body and the momentum at which they were falling meant that when they hit the roof, their bodies crashed through and they landed inside the building. Katsuki felt Kirishima's hold on him release from the force at which they hit the floor, and the impact had him tumbling a short distance away. He groaned, his body aching and bruised. His head felt uncoordinated and dizzy, having just been warped from one side of the arena to another, and then hurtled from the air. He heaved himself to his hands and knees and tried to take a few deep breaths, looking around slowly and trying to make sense of their surroundings. He caught sight of Kirishima flat on his back and heaving. Oi, Kirishima, he called, and stumbled over to where he was. You good? Kirishima groaned and opened his eyes blearily. We're alive. Katsuki snorted. He was about to make a sarcastic retort when he heard footsteps stomping from the staircase. For the sounds of their voice, it didn't sound like anyone friendly. Villains. Yeah, we are. Now get up, we've got company. Die! Katsuki screamed, firing his quirk as hard as he could at the two villains. Behind him, Kirishima had disposed of a few more villains with swift hardened hits. Is this all of them? Katsuki huffed. They're so weak. These villains were small fry. They were nothing like the Vortex guy back there. He figured he could have just let Kirishima continue catching his breath whilst he handled them all. All right, let's hurry up and help out the others. Kirishima said urgently. If we're here, then everyone else should be inside USJ too. I'm worried about the guys with less offensive ability. Hold on one second, shitty hair. You sure you're good? Katsuki didn't know, especially considering shitty hair's quirk, but he was skeptical. He was still pissed that he did something so reckless like taking the hit like that. Yeah, I was just a bit winded. Kirishima grinned. My quirk might not be flashy, but it keeps me safe. Not flashy. Katsuki narrowed his eyes. His soulmate said shit like that, despite having also said that they were training to be a hero too. He didn't know why he cared about shitty hair saying it too, but he felt a strong impulse to correct him. Shut the fuck about this flashy shit. Katsuki poked Kirishima harshly in the chest. You're in the hero course, aren't you? You just fell from mid-air without breaking anything. You've then fought off a load of villains without so much of a graze, and you're still ready to fight some more. What the fuck does it matter if your quirk is flashy or not? Kirishima stared at him, eyes wide and shining. Katsuki felt instant regret. Bakugo. Shut the fuck up. That was so manly and inspiring, bro. Never speak of this again, or I'll kill you. Ah, don't be getting shy now, Bakugo. I take it all the fuck back, shitty hair. Katsuki marched over to the exit, more than ready to get out of this shithole. Bakugo, wait up. Don't follow me, shitty hair. I'm going to go kill that 𝗵𝘃𝗲. What? You're gonna act childish at a time like this? Besides, that guy's attacks are… Shut up. That gate bastard is the enemy's way in and out. I'm going to cut off their getaway route for when that time comes. A villain jumped out at them. Katsuki blew it up promptly. Besides, he continued, unaffected, if these small fry villains are the ones assigned to us, pretty much everyone will be fine, right? Kirishima tilted his head and grinned at him. Since when were you so calm and rational? I thought you were more like, die, die, die. He deepened his voice in an attempt to mimic Katsuki. I'm always calm and rational, you shitty-haired fuck. Katsuki bellowed. Do whatever you want, I'm off. Wait. Kirishima stopped him with a hand to his shoulder. Bullying in our classmates? That's real manly, Bakugo. I'll come with you. A spark of familiarity ran through Bakugo again at that word. Manly. Just how many people use that word? Something niggling at Katsuki relaxed upon hearing Kirishima decide to follow him. Like the feeling he gets at the back of his head when leaving the house sometimes. The feeling of, aren't you forgetting something? Eased only by slapping his rear pockets and feeling the protrusion of his phone and wallet. Katsuki slumped back onto his bed, fatigue finally settling into his bones and muscles, no longer being fought back by bursts of adrenaline. The sun had long since set by the time he got home. He just about had enough energy to swallow some food and soak off all the sweat and grime from the whole ordeal. A tingle on his right arm sent a small spark of energy through him, however, and he quickly lifted it to read what the message said. Soulbrew, I've had the most awful day away. Katsuki took note of the feelings of fatigue, agitation, and anxiety that accompanied the writing, though they were hard to distinguish from his own similar feelings. What happened? Are you okay? No. Just as immediate worry began to alert his foggy mind, the word was quickly scribbled out. Yes, I am okay. I'm safe at least. School was intense. You too, huh? What do you mean? I had a hella rough training session today. No way. Me too. That's wild. Yeah, it got out of hand, and some teachers had to step in. Don't get it wrong, though. I had it sorted. Katsuki thought back to All Might saving him from the Nomu and decided that was a lie. He didn't have shit sorted. No kidding, huh? I can feel you're as tired as me. As long as you're safe, bro, I have no doubt you're super strong and manly. Are you safe? Yep. Safe and sound in bed, talking to my soul bro. We're meant to be, laughing face. This is so humiliating, Katsuki thought decidedly, as his stomach fluttered and his heart tugged. He really didn't want to be one of those people. The people he sees simpering over their skin across from him on the train, giggling obliviously in the corners of cafes, thumbs running absently over inked skin as if the words were their soulmate's knuckles. It wasn't that he didn't get it. It was that he didn't want to get it. Getting it meant feeling envy. Feeling envy meant he needed to force himself to ignore warm, crinkled gazes flickering across sentence after carrying sentence, and lie to himself that he didn't care about not having that. And now here he was, laying on his bed, lamp still on as fatigue tugged at his eyelids, urging him to drop his forearm and succumb to sleep. Mouth spread in a lazy smile as he fixated on those words. Where meant to be. Messaging Katsuki in bed was where his soulmate was meant to be. Disgusting, his head thought firmly. The feelings in his heart, however, brought forth a compelling argument otherwise. Good. Exactly. It was all he could say. Katsuki was sure his feelings would fill in the gaps for his soulmate, make up for all the unwritten words he couldn't yet effectuate. In other news, I think I've managed to make friends with the prickly guy in our class. Prickly? The fuck does that mean? Like at first glance, he has this attitude that stinks and he comes across hella rude. But today, I saw a part of him that was rational and reasonable. It was so unexpected and manly. Manly? You really like that word, huh? Absolutely. If 𝗵𝗃 taught me anything, it's that being manly and brave is the most important part of being a hero. 𝗵𝗃? That your favorite hero? Yeah. He's the one who inspired me to be a hero. Huh. Interesting. What were those high and mighty feelings I felt just then? Are you looking down on 𝗵𝗃? No, he's fine. Fine. Yeah, idiot. Fine. Then who's your fave hero? TCH, Katsuki scoffed, folding his arms defensively. All Might had become a strange topic for him recently. A hero who was once his favorite, who arguably still is his favorite, was now his teacher. It was weird. It took approximately a week of school for Katsuki to decrease the amount of All Might merch he had around his room. No one should have to see their teachers grinning cheesily at them outside of school hours in the comfort of their bedroom, especially not after they had lectured them about the unsafe use of their quirk or whatever. At the same time, All Might the teacher was different from All Might the pro hero, so Katsuki did leave a poster or two up on his walls. All Might the pro hero could stay, but he was on thin fucking ice. Bro? You there? You're thinking really hard about this. All Might, don't you dare fucking tell anyone. Soul bro. For real? Boring. The fuck do you mean boring? He's the #1 pro hero? Yeah, exactly. He's everyone's fave hero. All Might doesn't count. Pick someone else. And 𝗬𝗲 is also off limits. He's too close to All Might. Best Jeanist is okay, I suppose. Nice choice. A super manly and stylish hero. Fatigue made the word swim strangely on Katsuki's forearm, and he didn't have the energy to strain his eyes to focus. But it seemed his soulmate was having a similar problem, their handwriting wobbly and almost unreadable. Don't want to fall asleep on you. I'm tired. Go to bed. No, you go to bed. Wait, no, you're not allowed. You have to say goodnight first. It's the rules. Katsuki let out a huff of affectionate laughter. Good night, idiot. Stay safe. Good night, bro, love. You too. It's 𝗵𝗃. Katsuki clenched at his hair, head bent down as glared at the pin marks and grooves on his desk, deep in thought. He was 95% sure that 𝗵𝗃 was his platonic soulmate. There was simply no way he could continue to ignore the growing list of similarities between the two of them. What the fuck am I supposed to do now? There was the small chance that he had gotten the wrong end of the stick and 𝗵𝗃 was not his soulmate. It could just be that his soulmate is very similar to him. At the same time, however, there were so many similarities that Katsuki was too skeptical to consider them to be coincidences. With a growl, he pulled out a notebook and drew a Venn diagram, labeling either circle soulmate and shitty hair. In the overlapped area, he began listing all the things that he had noticed of them having in common. Use the word manly. Fave hero is 𝗵𝗃. Training to be heroes. Call people brothers. Speak to their platonic soulmate. Call their quirk not flashy. Favorite food is meat. Thinking about it honestly too, Katsuki liked 𝗵𝗃. He was one of the few people in his class that he could actually stand being around. Being friends with 𝗵𝗃 felt different to being friends with the extras in middle school. 𝗵𝗃 wasn't afraid to call him out when he was being an asshole. He also wasn't afraid of Katsuki, and he therefore had no reason not to be real and honest with him. It was refreshing. And though the same could be said about the other friends he had made in class, 𝗵𝗃 was the only one he could trust. Not to mention the thrill that ran through Katsuki whenever he considered 𝗵𝗃 being his soulmate. He hated how right it felt for them to be 𝗵𝗃, but he also didn't want to set himself up for disappointment or embarrassment. There was also that niggling insecurity that 𝗵𝗃 would be disappointed or underwhelmed upon finding out his soulmate was Katsuki. Though Katsuki was self-assured and confident, he was also self-aware enough to know that he was unlikable and generally considered an asshole. On the contrary, 𝗵𝗃 was well known to be a nice and friendly guy. There wasn't anyone in the class he didn't get along with. Would he be disappointed to find out that the person he had been talking to this whole time was someone like Katsuki? However, even if that was the case, if they were soulmates, then they risked finding it out in class, in front of everyone. That was the last thing Katsuki wanted. He couldn't imagine anything worse than his classmates seeing Kirishima's carefree grin wilt in disappointment. The looking over and seeing the accompanying hurt in Katsuki's gaze, because he knew he wouldn't be able to hold that back. No, he needed control over the reveal. He was sure that if he asked Kirishima up front in person, he would be nice about it. He'd likely even keep it a secret if it turned out they weren't soulmates. But the mere thought was so nerve-wracking. He was certain he wouldn't be able to force the words out and maintain his calm in the slightest. The thought that Kirishima was his soulmate sent him spiraling now in the privacy of his bedroom. He decided then that he'd write to Soulmate and ask that way. That was the only way he'd be able to ease his curiosity and all these coincidences. Take a deep breath, Katsuki wrote in clear letters on his forearm. I know who you are. He stayed up late that night, way past midnight, waiting for a response. He got nothing. Katsuki still had not gotten a response by the next morning, and his mood was decidedly sour. He slammed his bag down loudly on his desk and slumped in his chair. Oh, Bakugo, someone called. Kirishima. Good morning. Katsuki huffed. So he's alive. He pointedly ignored shitty hair, fuming at his audacity to come over and sit on his desk after ignoring him. Go away, Katsuki hissed. Kirishima furrowed his brow in concern, but Pikachu continued to ramble next to him. Trust that fucking shitty hair to take a hint. Who does he think he is? My soulmate? Get fucked. We were just talking about Kirishima's soulmate. Pikachu announced obnoxiously. Kirishima rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly and gave a nervous laugh. Haha, yeah, they left quite the cryptic message last night, and I'm not sure what I'm supposed to say in response. Huh. They just put, in big letters, I know who you are, with no context whatsoever, and with no follow-up either. He pulled up his sleeve to reveal the soul mark in there, clear and solid as if they were written on with fresh ink straight from the nib of a big fat marker, were Katsuki's words. There was no doubt about it anymore. Kirishima Ijiro was Bakugo Katsuki's platonic soulmate. Anxiety or excitement, Katsuki couldn't tell, tightened in his chest. He resisted the urge to rub at the feeling, and instead cleared his throat. So what? He said as easily as he could. Kirishima and Pikachu looked at him like he was an idiot. What do you mean, so what? Kirishima asked incredulously. It's so ominous, dude. It kind of freaked me out. Yeah, who just writes that to a stranger out of nowhere? It's literally taking up your whole arm, Pikachu added. Huh. Katsuki didn't think about it like that. He supposed it was a bit strange, but he wasn't going to let Kirishima get away with this. Not after he had spent the whole night waiting for a fucking response. Did you ask what they fucking meant? Katsuki forced out. No, I wasn't sure how. They probably would have explained if you followed it up with, what? He continued pointedly. I guess. No, you gotta be careful, dude. Pikachu warned abruptly. There was a whole thing with child trafficking through soul marks, remember? Ah, fuck. You're right, bro. How could I forget? Katsuki blinked. Memories of big bold news headlines, courtroom drawings of handcuffed villains, clips of gray-suited politicians talking with gray-haired child psychologists, stern-faced lectures from homeroom teachers flashed in his head. Shit. A few years ago, there was a big case about a gang of villains who had been using soul marks to kidnap and traffic children. Using kids who had gotten their soul connections, the villains groomed them into writing to their soulmates, building relationships that might have been genuine but got the villains vital information like email addresses, names, ages, schools, locations, etc., to track more kids down to kidnap. It had been horrific. The gang had managed to traffic kids from all over the world just through soul marks. Governments all over the world had actively gotten together to form a plan to prevent something like this happening again. Nowadays, as soon as someone gets their soul connection, they are legally required to register it as soon as possible. Failing to do so was now a severely punished criminal offense. This was not mentioning the work that was put into place to educate kids about the dangers of revealing sensitive information about themselves, encouraging them to wait until adulthood before considering finding their soulmates, and warning them that if they did arrange to meet with a soulmate, they must do so with their guardians. Okay, Katsuki had to admit, that's fair. Upon reflection, he could see how sending a message like, "I know who you are," with no context could be considered concerning and dangerous. He groaned internally. This shouldn't be this fucking hard. It seemed there were no two ways about it. Katsuki had to speak to Kirishima in person. The moment the bell rang for lunch break, Katsuki marched over to Kirishima's desk and slammed his hands down on it. Kirishima jumped, but quickly relaxed upon realizing who it was. "Bakugo, what's up?" "We need to talk," he replied firmly. Kirishima looked at him uneasily. Is everything okay, Bakugo?" "Fucking peachy, now let's go." He stomped off, not waiting to see if he was following. Just as he reached the doors leading to outside, he heard the footsteps of someone running. "Wait up, Bakugo." Kirishima reached his side, panting slightly. "Where we're going?" "Somewhere quiet." "Are you mad at me about something?" Kirishima asked tentatively. Katsuki scoffed. "Yeah, I sure fucking am." He marched over to a cluster of trees on the school grounds and decided that would do. Kirishima looked at him uncertainly. What have I done?" "Show me your arm," Katsuki answered. "Huh." I said, "Show me your arm. The right one." Kirishima looked like he was about to protest, but chose against it and pulled up his sleeve. The words, "now," fading, were still there. "I know who you are." Katsuki poked the words harshly. "I wrote that," he said. Kirishima's eyebrows shot up. What?" I said, "I wrote that." What are you talking about, Bakugo?" Katsuki huffed loudly and rolled his eyes, feigning annoyance to hide how he was really feeling. Nervous, embarrassed, and vulnerable. He pulled up his own right sleeve and got out a marker from his pocket. He hated himself for how anxious and dizzy he felt at that moment. He's fought dangerous-ass villains before, and this is what gets him scared. But there was only one way to get Kirishima to believe him. He wrote firmly on his right arm, in similar big bold letters. "I wrote that." Kirishima gasped, gaping at his own forearm as the same words on Katsuki's arm transferred over to his. "No way." His eyes frantically flitted to his forearm to Katsuki's, over and over again, like he was struggling to believe what his eyes were showing him. He turned his dazed face to gawk at Katsuki. Katsuki looked to the side with a huff, his cheeks heating. "Look," he began. "This wasn't how I wanted to do this. When I realized that my soulmate was you, I thought that it'd only be a matter of time before it was revealed. We're in the same fucking class, so it was bound to happen sooner or later. I didn't want you to find out that it was me in front of a bunch of people, so I thought I'd tell you privately, but..." Katsuki forced himself to meet Kirishima's eyes. It was hard to read what was going through the other's head, other than the pure shock displayed by the almost comically widened eyes and raised eyebrows. But he hadn't been decked in the face, so he figured he must be doing okay so far. "But I was too fucking embarrassed to tell you in person, okay? That's why I wrote that message. I thought it would be easier to tell you through soulmarks than in person, but I guess that didn't fucking work out." Katsuki hunched in on himself, shoving his fists in his pockets. "I'm sorry for freaking you out, okay? I don't want you to think I'm part of some fucking trafficking ring or whatever, and..." His voice sounded small and quiet as he admitted, "And I don't want you to stop talking to me." Insecurity flooded Katsuki, and he hated it. He couldn't bring himself to meet Kirishima's eyes. He was certain his soulmate was disappointed in who he was, and now their soul connection was going to disappear because Kirishima, the friendliest fucking guy on the planet, has the miserablest fucking dick as his platonic soulmate. A pair of arms seized Katsuki and squeezed him tightly. Katsuki stiffened, unsure how to react. "Only you, Bakugo, only you," Kirishima said into his shoulder, unmistakable fondness and affection seeping into his voice. "Only you would be so fucking cryptic and ominous. I should have known." "Huh, you're not disappointed?" Katsuki hated how vulnerable he sounded. "Huh, why would I be disappointed?" Kirishima exclaimed. "I'm ecstatic. I've got the coolest soul bro ever." Katsuki returned the hug then, swallowing thickly. "Stop calling me soul bro. You're such an idiot." "Ah, I know you don't mean..." Not when I know it was you sending me all those nice messages. Katsuki shoved him away at that. I'm never writing to you ever again. You just said you didn't want to stop talking to me. No, I fucking didn't. Never speak of that again. Bakugo, don't say that. Kirishima put his arm around Katsuki's shoulders and began leading him back to the building. Wait, Katsuki stopped him. We can't tell people. He was never going to live down. I know who you are. Huh, why not? It's none of their business. Are you embarrassed? Like fuck I am. But I've said such nice things about you. Everyone's dying to know who you are. Shut the fuck up, I'm not nice. Yeah, you are. The nicest, coolest, manliest soul bro. And though Katsuki was feigning annoyance and irritation, he didn't shrug off Kirishima's arm. Even when they eventually joined the others for lunch, one arm stayed around Katsuki. Kaminari, Ishido, and Siro wheezed and sputtered with laughter. No fucking way. Bakugo? God. It makes so much sense if you think about it. Who else would be so unintentionally ominous? I know who you are. Yeah, not to mention, Kirishima's been the only one who can get through to Bakugo. True. Fuck you all. Get away from my desk, Katsuki hissed. What about Kirishima? Pikachu asked with a smirk. He can fuck off too. Kirishima placed a hand on top of his. Don't be like that, soul bro. Katsuki turned his hand so their palms were resting atop each other and fired an explosion. Kirishima didn't so much as blink, managing to harden his palm in time. Congratulations, Bakugo-kun. Finding one's soulmate is a very important event in one's life. Glasses commended, arms chopping by his side robotically. Yeah, Glasses, pack it in. Oh, but Bakugo, you've not told us how you realized it was Kirishima. Ishido asked excitedly. Katsuki scoffed. It was obvious. Who else uses the word manly, is obsessed with Crimson Riot, and has such shitty handwriting? Hey! Kirishima's protest was drowned out by everyone ing. Looking around, all of their classmates had offered up some form of congratulations, except for one. Deku. Deku was currently sitting at his desk, choosing to remain stiffly in his chair. He looked uncomfortable, despite the polite smile on his face. Isn't it wonderful, Deku? Roundface asked dreamily. 2 soulmates in our class? An involuntary grimace flashed on Deku's face then, a grimace that didn't go unnoticed. Deku-kun, are you okay? Deku stood up abruptly from his desk. He mumbled an excuse about needing to see Recovery Girl before quickly leaving the classroom. Roundface blinked. I wonder what's up with Midoriya-kun, Glasses said thoughtfully. I do hope he's okay. He didn't look very well, did he? Roundface hummed thoughtfully. I'm not sure. I don't know if you've noticed, Ida-kun, but he does that a lot. Does what? Gets super uncomfortable and tense whenever soulmates are mentioned. I wonder why. Well, I suppose everyone has their own personal experiences and opinions on soulmates. Katsuki's brow furrowed. Despite the happiness and relief of finding his platonic soulmate, his mood had soured at what he had just overheard. A dusty memory wandered to the forefront of his mind. Deku sat on a mossy log in the woods, his insect net laying discarded on the sun-baked ground, tiny fists rubbing his eyes as he sniffled. Deku telling Katsuki that his dad had moved away, and it was all his fault because he was quirkless. Katsuki getting up and standing over Deku, casting a shadow over him as he squinted up confusedly at him. Katsuki holding a hand out, telling Deku to forget that old man and grab his net because they were going to catch shiny dragonflies instead of sitting around and crying about stupid adults. Deku reaching out tentatively and Katsuki pulling him to his feet. The two of them screaming and giggling wildly as they ran as fast as they could through the clearing, both still clinging to each other. The tears long forgotten as they both competed to see who could find the coolest-looking bugs, Katsuki deliberately letting a few of his fly away so Deku could win. So, that's why Deku was looking like he had a stick up his ass. What did end up happening to Inko's and Hisashi's soul connection? When Aizawa eventually arrived at the classroom and told them all to shut up and get to their seats, Deku still hadn't returned. It was that Katsuki felt a strange twitching in his fingers, a small niggling itch to write on his left arm. He frowned. He still had no idea if he even had a romantic soulmate. If he did, he doubted the connection had formed yet. Well, what's the worst that could happen? Without thinking too much about it, Katsuki discreetly wrote, "What's up?"